The Farmers Almanac has predicted winter again, which is good because I was starting to get concerned that we might not have one this year, and apparently we needed somebody to officially come forward in August while half of the country is still trying to touch a steering wheel without leaving fingerprints and announce that several months from now it is probably going to get cold. And I read these forecasts every year. I don't know why. I have never once changed my behavior because of a Farmers Almanac winter forecast, but I will absolutely read one like I've just received classified intelligence from a source embedded deep inside January, because that's what it feels like. You'll be sitting there in August sweating while doing absolutely nothing, because August has that ability where you can walk outside to check the mail and somehow come back looking like you helped move a refrigerator, and somebody shares an article saying the Farmers Almanac has released its winter outlook, and suddenly I'm interested. Oh, what have they seen? Because apparently somebody over there knows something. They've been studying winter. They've been watching it, tracking its movements. Winter thinks it's, still hiding somewhere up around Canada, but the Farmers Almanac has people. And I don't completely understand how long range weather forecasting works, which actually makes it much more enjoyable, because in my mind, there's an old wooden room somewhere with 12 men gathered around a table covered in maps. One of them hasn't spoken since 1987, and every few minutes somebody walks in carrying a pine cone. Everyone studies it. Finally, the oldest man in the room says, Minnesota's going to have a rough February, and everybody starts writing. I'm sure there is more science involved than that, but I don't want to know how much, because we've already got normal weather forecasts, and normal weather forecasting has access to satellites, radar, computers, atmospheric measurements, and presumably several people who went to college specifically to understand clouds, and they can still occasionally get Thursday wrong. The Farmers Almanac walks into August and starts talking about February. My phone sometimes changes tomorrow's forecast while tomorrow is happening. At 8 in the morning, it says there's a 10% chance of rain. At 10:30, it's 40%. By lunch, it's 80%. And at 2, it's raining while the app says rain ending soon, which feels less like forecasting and more like my phone looking out the same window I am. Yeah, I see it. Thank you. But every year, the long-range winter forecast arrives and we all gather around because Americans have a strange relationship with winter predictions where we don't actually want good news. Nobody shares an article that says winter expected to be reasonable. I've never seen somebody rush into work saying, guys, you're not going to believe this. Temperatures could remain seasonally appropriate. We need danger. We need phrases like bitter cold, winter wallop, polar plunge, snowy showdown, because apparently weather forecasting becomes professional wrestling once you get more than 3 months away. If you're going to tell me about January and August, I want January to be furious, fast and the furious. I want the map to look like we're evacuating, and there is always a map. The map is important because I don't really believe anything until somebody puts colors behind it. You can tell me winter will be cold and I'll say, yeah, probably. But show me Texas underneath a large blue shape labeled cold and stormy. And now I'm looking at generators. Maps make everything official, and nobody studies the whole map. That's what I love about these things. They'll show the entire United States with 8 different weather regions, and every single one of us immediately starts trying to locate our house. I don't care what's happening in Oregon. I'm sure Oregon is lovely, but those people are going to have to handle Oregon just like I'm going to have to handle Texas. I'm zooming into Northeast Texas, trying to determine where my driveway is technically inside the mild and wet or cold and unsettled, because somehow the line always goes directly through where you live. The house across the street gets a pleasant winter. I'm fighting for survival. And unsettled is a fantastic weather term because it doesn't actually tell me anything. People can be unsettled. Governments can be unsettled. A raccoon trapped inside a Dollar General is unsettled. What exactly is the atmosphere planning? Because if the official prediction is that the weather will be unsettled, I could have told you that. Weather has never seemed particularly emotionally stable. This is where winter forecasting becomes much more interesting, because the Farmers Almanac isn't even the only authority we've historically consulted on this subject. Human beings have apparently spent thousands of years trying to figure out winter without simply waiting for winter. We have groundhogs, we have woolly bear caterpillars. People look at squirrels gathering nuts. People examine persimmon seeds. There are old sayings involving fog in August. At some point, we're going to have to admit that our national winter preparedness system includes an alarming number of animals that have not agreed to participate. The squirrel is especially interesting to me because people will say that squirrels are gathering nuts early. They know something. Do they? Because every squirrel I've ever seen looks like he's experiencing an emergency. I've never seen a squirrel casually complete a task. Nobody has ever looked outside and seen a squirrel slowly walking across the yard thinking, Gerald seems relaxed. today. They're always sprinting, they're always digging, they're burying something, they're immediately forgetting where they buried it. Then they're running up a tree because a leaf moved. And we've decided these are the meteorologists. Maybe they do know something, but that possibility actually bothers me more, because if squirrels really can predict winter, then we've completely misunderstood squirrels. They're not panicking, they're informed. That squirrel running across your yard in September isn't thinking about acorns, he's looking at you. He's looking at your house, he's looking at your complete lack of stored food, and he's thinking, this guy has no idea what's coming. Then you've got Punxsutawney Phil, who is somehow still involved in this operation despite having one job per year and an extremely questionable methodology. We drag a groundhog out of his house, hold him up in front of several thousand screaming people wearing top hats, and then base part of our cultural understanding of seasonal weather on whether the terrified groundhog notices lighting conditions. And nobody questions this because we've been doing it long enough. That's how traditions work. Anything becomes legitimate if your great grandparents also did it. If I started doing this tomorrow with a possum behind Walmart, I'd be asked to leave. But if my grandson keeps doing it and his grandson continues to do it, eventually the mayor is coming. There'll be hats, the possum gets a name, local schools close, the Weather Channel sends somebody, and by 2140, thousands of people are standing behind Walmart waiting to see whether Bartholomew the possum eats a chicken nugget before sunrise, because if he does, apparently spring comes early. This is how civilization gets tradition. Somebody does something weird and nobody stops them soon enough. But despite all these methods, every year when the winter forecast comes out, we read it, we share it, we tell somebody else about it. They're saying it's going to be a bad winter. Who is they? Doesn't matter. They know, they're saying it, then we make absolutely no preparations whatsoever. That's the part that gets me. If we genuinely believed the forecast with the seriousness that we discuss it, August would look completely different. People would be standing in Home Depot buying plywood. There'd be people loading firewood while it's 103 degrees outside. You'd call somebody and ask what they're doing Saturday and they'd say, can't, prepared for February. Instead, we just store the information somewhere in our brains and wait. Then 4 months later, the temperature drops to 24 degrees and suddenly somebody remembers the almanac called this. Did they? Because I distinctly remember the prediction containing approximately 7 weather adjectives and covering a geographical region the size of the Roman Empire. But this is how weather predictions become correct. You remember the parts that happen. Nobody gets to February after a mild winter and starts demanding accountability. I have never seen somebody angrily march into a bookstore carrying an almanac. You people said brisk. Nobody wants a refund. Nobody demands an investigation. We just move on because there's another forecast coming, and I actually like that, because underneath all of this, there is something very human about wanting to know what the next season is going to bring. We've always done it. Before weather apps and radar and satellites, people watched the sky, animals, trees, clouds, stars, crops. Probably that one guy in town whose knee hurt whenever the rain was coming. Every town had that guy. My knee's acting up. Suddenly, 6 farmers cancel their afternoon plans, and now we've got more technology than any civilization before us. I can pull a satellite image on the entire continent out of my pocket while sitting on the toilet, and somehow we're still interested in whether the squirrels seem unusually motivated, because knowing what's coming makes us feel like we have some control over it. If somebody tells me January is going to be brutal in August, there is a part of my brain that thinks I have accomplished something simply by knowing. I haven't bought anything, I haven't prepared anything, I haven't even located my gloves, but I'm informed January can't surprise me now, except it absolutely will. Because August me and January me are two completely different people. August me cannot emotionally understand cold. Right now, if you told me it was going to be 28 degrees tomorrow, part of me would think that sounds wonderful. 28, I'll wear a jacket, I'll make coffee, I'll stand outside and enjoy it. Then January arrives, it's 28 degrees, and I'm suddenly walking from my front door to my vehicle like I'm part of an expedition that lost 3 men crossing the yard. And January me cannot remember the heat. That's the strange thing about weather. Whatever temperature it currently is feels permanent. In August, winter sounds fictional. In January, summer sounds like something historians invented. You show me a photograph of myself wearing shorts in July and I'll think, people lived like this? So maybe that's the real purpose of the Farmers Almanac winter forecast. It's not necessarily there to tell us exactly what will happen. It's there to remind us while we're standing outside in the August wondering whether the sun has moved several thousand miles closer to Earth, that this isn't permanent. Another season is already on its way. Eventually the air conditioner will stop sounding like it's fighting for its life. Eventually you'll find that jacket you haven't seen since March. Eventually you'll walk outside and say it's actually kind of nice. And approximately 3 weeks later you'll complain that it's too cold because we don't actually want warm warm weather or cold weather, we want whatever temperature allows us to forget temperature exists. About 67 degrees, slight breeze, maybe a cloud. Human civilization has spent thousands of years studying weather, developing satellites, building computer models, watching animals, and publishing annual forecasts just to eventually discover that what everybody really wants is one afternoon in October. And when that afternoon finally arrives, somewhere a squirrel will run across my yard carrying an acorn, looking extremely concerned. And this time I'm watching him because he knows something. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed whatever that was, there's plenty more where it came from. If that sounds like something you'd like to see again, consider subscribing. It lets YouTube know there's at least one other person who understands what's going on here.